My dear friends, how are you today? Have you experienced feeling angry towards another person? What did you do? There is a classic story about the two monks, a senior monk and a younger one. They were traveling together. As they were traveling, they arrived at a river. It just so happened that they saw the current was so strong. And on the side of the river with them also stood a young woman. The young woman asked for their help. However, they glanced at each other. The senior monk and the younger one exchanged glances. Why? Because they vowed never to touch any woman. But then the older monk, without words, grabbed the woman and placed her at his back. He carried her, and when they arrived at the other side of the river, he gently placed her down and continued on in their journey. But what happened? The younger one was so shocked, he cannot believe the older monk. But for an hour, he did not say anything. They just continued on with their journey. An hour again, and then the third hour, the younger one cannot contain anymore in himself his emotions. He blurted out, "As monks, we cannot touch any woman, all the more carry a person, especially a woman, on our back. How could you do such a thing?" And the elder monk said, "You know, my dear brother, 3 hours ago, I gently placed down that girl. Why are you still carrying her with you?" 3 oras na ang nakalipas nang ibinaba ko yung babae. Pero bakit hanggang ngayon, buhat-buhat mo pa rin siya? My dear friends, this is a simple story about practically every one of us. How often do we carry around our past hurts, holding on to our resentments, when the only person we are really hurting is ourselves? There would be times in our lives wherein we will be experiencing hurtful circumstances. We can choose to dwell over the past or events, but it will eventually weigh us down and drain our energy. Being angry in itself is an emotion that is an ordinary feeling that we feel. However, many times we fuel this feeling with unnecessary fanning, so much more that it simmer within us, and then eventually it wells up into a sinful action. Kadalasan po kasi, pinapaypayan pa natin yung sama ng loob natin hanggang sa ito ay kumulo sa loob natin at udyukan tayong gumawa ng masama. But just as the same, we have two tendencies when we are feeling that kind of emotion. First, sometimes we nurse that feeling and we carry it with us all around. Pero kagaya nga po ng sinabi sa akin ng aking spiritual director, it is an unnecessary baggage. Kasi kahit yung isang mabigat na papel, hawakan mo yan, yung magaan pong papel, gantong piraso, hawakan mo yan ng 24 oras. Mangangalay ka rin. The longer you carry, no matter how small the weight is, it will tire your body. On the second one, there is also a tendency for us to bury down our feelings. Tabunan na lang yung damdamin natin. And then eventually, it will explode. Bigla na lang tayong sasabog. But just as the same, in all these circumstances, our wrong attitude toward anger only leads to painful and most of the times traumatic experiences with others. But the good news is Jesus puts far greater value on reconciliation. He does not want us to throw away our relationships, but He wants us to do our best to straighten up our connection and to refuse to give up on each other. That's why in our gospel, from the Sermon on the Mount, He teaches us that we will not enter into the kingdom of heaven unless we surpass the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees. Why? Because outside this Pharisees and scribes, seemingly they were very righteous. They proudly proclaim and announce they had never killed anyone. And yet, they did not violate the commandments exteriorly. But are we like them? It is usually quite easy to avoid committing the sin of murder. If we are not murderers, however, it does not mean that we have become virtuous all the way. Because Jesus is not only ask us not to kill, but to love one another. Jesus wants us to look deeper and root out the anger that can lead to murder. He asks us to turn away from our harsh judgments and contempt that we pour out on others in our anger. Remember, my dear friends, righteousness is more than avoiding sin. The Lord calls us to love one another. That's why He purposely tells us that any hindrance in our love towards the other is a stain in our worship of God. What did He ask us? Jesus advised us to interrupt even our worship. Leave your gift. Leave it at the altar. If you have someone whom you are in conflict with, go to him. Go to that person. Reconcile with that person. And then come back. Offer your gift. My dear friends, nothing pleases God more than a clean heart. Let us then ask ourselves, are we nursing grudges towards another person? Let us beg for that grace of healing, so that we could be able to reach out to the other and forgive him. For with God, reconciliation is of far greater oblation, healing our shattered hearts, mending our severed relationships. Everything else comes after. Everything else comes after. Amen.